Zane loved completing real estate transactions, whether he was buying a home or selling. When he bought a house, he always believed he was getting a good deal, a house that was undervalued and could potentially fetch him tens of thousands of dollars. When he sold a house, he liked to receive a big check confirming his original estimate of its value. Zane was 52 years old. He renovated houses for 32 years. He was good at it, and it provided him with a very good income. He lived in a very nice house, which he actually renovated himself. The fact that he bought it at a very low price and it was in a very prestigious area provided him with instant capital that was double what he paid for it once some improvements were made. And given that he bought it with cash, like all his properties, his equity doubled as soon as he renovated it because there was no mortgage. Zion came from a middle-class family. When he graduated from high school, his family didn't have enough money to send him to college. He became a licensed carpenter and then a licensed cabinet maker. For a young man, he was making good money in the construction business. And because he lived at home, he was able to save a significant portion of his salary each month. He was planning to attend a local college and begin studying for a degree in mechanical engineering. However, his work renovating houses distracted him. The way he started was almost an accident. While he was building cabinets for a friend in an area with affordable condominiums, Zane noticed a nearby condo where furniture and belongings were being removed. There was a for sale sign in the yard. He decided to go to the condo and talk to the owner. However, it turned out that the person who did most of the work was the owner's realtor. He showed Zane a two-room condo on the first floor. It was in terrible condition. The carpets were worn and stained. There were holes in the walls. The sliding doors were hanging on one hinge. The cabinets were ruined, the windows were painted over and wouldn't open, and the appliances didn't work properly. The realtor said the tenants had badly damaged the place, and the out-of-town owner wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Zane asked, "How much?" The realtor said, $150,000. And he added, "Based on comparative data, similar condos in good condition in this area sell for $225,000. Based on his knowledge of construction costs, Zane estimated that he could renovate the place better than new for about $25,000 or $30,000. However, Zane did not have $150,000. He only had enough for a 20% down payment. The realtor suggested a bank he was familiar with that specialized in reconstruction loans that include the necessary funds to renovate a property. The realtor said he would help Zane with the loan process. Luckily, Zane had good credit and a history of on-time payments. However, he had to provide a seemingly endless list of his finances, his estimates as a contractor of the cost of improvements, and realtor comparative data on similar condos in the area. The loan approval took several weeks, after which he became the owner of the property. Since Zane had a day job, he could only work on the condo in his spare time, and renovations were slow. So he hired some unemployed workers for the day to do some of the work. This turned out to be a big mistake. Not only was their work rushed, but Zane had to correct some of their shoddy work. All of this took up time while Zane paid his mortgage, homeowner's insurance, utilities, taxes, and condo fees. Zane's solution was to take 2 weeks off and work on the condo 12 hours a day, including weekends. It was hard, and he made mistakes about what he needed to do and in what order. He also discovered that the entire air conditioning system would have to be replaced, which meant several $1,000s in unplanned expenses. Using his realtor, Zane put the condo on the market before it was completely ready. Surprisingly, the buyer was a neighbor who wanted to buy a place for his mother. Zane told the potential buyer to bring his mother to the condo, and she could choose the colors and carpeting. When Zane finished his renovations, the condo was better than new. New tile in the kitchen and bathrooms, new wood floors, new cabinets, new stainless steel, appliances, and, of course, a new air conditioning system. The new owner agreed to pay the asking price of $250,000. Zane invested $40,000 into renovating the place. This included paying qualified tradesmen for first-class work on tile, flooring, electrical, and HVAC. After paying the realtor's commission and some minor closing costs, Zane walked away with $35,000 after just 3 months of work. He could have earned more if he had done things differently, but he was happy with his first investment, and he vowed not to make the same mistakes again. Throughout the year, many seminars were held on real estate resale. Zane visited many of them before investing in other properties. Most importantly, he learned about hard money bankers. These investor organizations specialize in providing money, including renovation costs, to property renovators. Simply submit your proposal along with the purchase price, renovation estimates, and comparison data, and if they approve your project, you'll get your money. The disadvantage is that they charge a very high interest rate, up to 15%. They may also charge points. However, if your project only takes 4 months, the interest you pay is only 5%. In addition, these loans are processed very quickly, sometimes in a matter of days. This eliminates endless paperwork and the long time required to obtain a bank loan. To find the perfect properties to buy, Zane became a realtor. Thus, he had access to the multiple listing service. He could find suitable properties online, visit them, and go inside with his castle map and view them before making an offer. He could also independently study comparative data and find out how much similar houses cost. Most importantly, he could pay himself a commission both when buying a property and when selling it. Over the next few years, Zane bought, renovated, and sold numerous properties. He started with small, inexpensive condominiums, moved to larger townhomes, and eventually to basic family homes. He saved his profits and used them to increase down payments by taking out smaller loans. He eventually accumulated enough money to buy houses with cash. This greatly speeded up the selling process and allowed him to buy properties from anxious sellers at very low prices. Zane also began working less on real estate on his own. He had a good contractor with a team of experienced workers. They soon learned what Zane's preferences were in terms of flooring, rugs, lighting, colors, etc., and Zane could simply show them the property and then just let them do their job. He was able to keep the cost of the renovation to a minimum because he was able to provide ongoing work for the contractor and his team. Zane's job became finding properties, purchasing them, and then handing them over to a contractor. Sometimes he had 2 or 3 objects at the same time in different stages of renovation. At the start of this story, Zane had a net worth of over $1 million, most of it in cash. His annual income fluctuated with the economy and the vagaries of the real estate market, but was almost always in the 6-figure range. He put most of it back into his cash account so he could buy properties with cash. However, he lived modestly and frugally in a middle-class home, and few of his friends or family knew his true condition. 5 years after he became a major player in the market, Zane married the former Miss Bryce Beaumont. Bryce was an extremely attractive woman, 4 years his junior. Her family was wealthy, and Bryce was their only child. However, they never looked down on Zane and his lack of education because they knew that he earned more than enough, and they understood that their daughter and Zane were madly in love with each other. In fact, they respected him very much. Zane and Bryce had 3 daughters, Andrea, Angelica, and Ashley. They were all adults, leaving home and getting married with small children. However, only Andrea lived nearby, about 2 hours away. They all made it a ritual to meet on important holidays: Christmas and New Year's, Independence Day, and Thanksgiving. Bryce worked as a materials manager for a manufacturing company. Her job was to ensure that the resources needed for daily work were ordered on time and available when needed. This included hundreds and hundreds of titlies. She worked with dozens of vendors and suppliers every month. She was good at her job and really enjoyed it. The day it all started, Friday, Zane had just closed on another house deal. It was a middle-class house in a mixed working-class neighborhood. The previous owners were an elderly couple who had lived there for over 30 years. Unfortunately, a man recently passed away. The couple's children, who lived 1,500 miles away, agreed that they would take their aging mother with them and find a place for her in a nursing home near their home. However, they had to decide what to do with the couple's home. The realtor they worked with, a colleague of Zane's, noted that the house was a slow seller. It was neglected and in dire need of renovation. He suggested they contact Zane as a potential renovator buyer. Zane was invited into the house to inspect it. He had an experienced eye for the major elements of a home that needed renovation. The foundation, roof, electrical system, and HVAC system all needed restoration. He also examined the outside. He found cracks in the backyard walls, holes in the driveway, and weeds where the lawn should have been instead of grass. Finally, he noticed that all the old furniture was still in the house. The kitchen was filled with pots and pans, cooking utensils, and dishes. Plus, the two-car garage was filled with patio furniture, tools, folding tables, and plenty of kitchen and serving equipment. Looks like the old couple once ran a catering business. The old couple's children knew that comparable houses were valued at $315,000. Zane indicated that they would have to invest at least $50,000 and 3 months of his time to renovate the house. He went on to explain that if he were to buy it, he would need to make a profit of $50,000 to make the purchase worth his time. Therefore, the best he could offer them was $250,000. In addition, he told them that he would buy the house for cash and would be responsible for removing all unnecessary items. Since the house was paid off many years ago, this meant that the children would split the $250,000 profit minus closing costs. What's more, by using transactional attorney Zane, they could close the deal within 5 days. The children didn't have to think long about the proposal. They accepted him immediately. The closing took place the following Friday at 2:00 p.m., and Zane left the closing agent's office with the keys at 3:30 p.m. Since it was already late in the afternoon, instead of stopping by his office, Zane decided to go straight home. He thought he might take Bryce to celebrate another successful purchase, as he did when he bought or sold any of his properties. Bryce's car was in the garage when he arrived home, which was a surprise because she wasn't usually home at that time. She didn't greet him when he came through the door. Zane, as he often did when he got home, poured himself 2 neat shots of Captain Morgan rum to ease the stress of the day. As he did this, he heard the shower running in the upstairs bathroom. After taking off his jacket, loosening his tie, and rolling up his sleeves, he went upstairs to announce his presence. Entering his spacious bedroom, he stopped. On the bed were 2 cocktail dresses, one black and one red. Also on the bed were 2 sets of bras and panties, matching the colors of the dresses. On the floor underneath the dresses were matching high heels. Black fishnet thigh-high stockings hung on the chair at Bryce's dressing table. Looking around, Zane noticed that on Bryce's dressing table lay a bright red lipstick, along with a bottle of her most expensive perfume, an anniversary gift from Zane several years ago. What the hell is going on? Zane said to himself. Zane decided to sit and wait in the bedroom sitting area until his wife came out of the bathroom. When Bryce came out of the bathroom, she was wrapped in a towel, and her hair was also wrapped. She didn't see Zane sitting motionless on the side. She sat down on a chair at her dressing table and began powdering her arms, shoulders, and legs. When Bryce took the towel off her head and shook out her locks, Zane saw that she was at the hair salon and had her hair styled into voluminous curls and curls. He also noticed that her nails were painted bright red. "What's happening?" Zane asked in a relatively normal voice. Bryce jumped and let out a small scream. "Zane, you scared me. I didn't know you were home." "I closed the deal early in the day," Zane replied, "and decided to go home instead of going back to the office and doing nothing. I was thinking that I might take my wife out to dinner to celebrate the closing. It's been a few weeks since I've done that. However, I got the impression that you already have plans. So I ask again, what's going on?" "Yes, darling," she replied. "I do have plans for this evening. I'm going out to dinner with a friend." Zane's internal state began to swirl, but he maintained his calm demeanor. "I'm guessing, based on the clothes you posted, that you're not planning on going out with a friend, but rather a man. Moreover, since I see you've got your dancing shoes out, You intend to go dancing, right? Yes, darling, Bryce replied. We thought we could go dancing to spice up the evening. Can I ask who this friend you're going on a date with is? Oh, it's just a friend of mine from work. His name is Harvey Rankle. Not from work, actually. He's a sales representative for the company we buy all our paper from. He comes into town once a month, stays overnight, and then returns to Chicago. He always makes time to talk to me, and the last couple of times he came, we went out to lunch together. He is a very nice man, very polite and attentive. And, Bryce quickly added, it's not really a real date. It's basically just dinner and talking with a friend. Zane realized that Bryce would be evasive about his date, so he decided to sidestep the topic and find out her intentions. What dress are you going to wear? Zane asked. I just can't decide. Maybe you can tell me what I'd look best in? Well, Zane began, red will definitely catch the attention of any man. It may be too flashy for a first date, although it goes well with your lipstick and nails, but no man can resist the appeal of a sexy black cocktail dress. He continued, I feel like you haven't dressed this smart for me in a long time, even on our dates. What's so special? Black, that is, Bryce said and did not answer his question. Zane thought for a minute that it had really been a long time since Bryce had dressed so seductively for a date. Then he reproached himself. It had been a long time since he had suggested that they go out on the town together for a really chic evening that would include dancing. He fell into a routine of taking his wife out to dinner when he bought or sold a house, but it was usually at a nice local place like Clyde's or Red Lobster or TGI Fridays, and it had been an eternity since he last asked her to dance. Zane finished his spiced rum but felt he needed another. He apologized, saying he would be back in a minute. Downstairs he poured himself another glass and thought about what was happening. His wife was apparently going on a date tonight. A hot date. She tried to minimize the impact of her actions on Zane by minimizing their significance and making him believe it was just a dinner at some local restaurant with a random friend. Clearly, from the way she prepared for her date, there was much more to it than just that. Zane didn't know why she thought she could give it to him so easily, but she tried. When he returned to their bedroom, Bryce had already put on her bra and panties and was now pulling thigh-high stockings over her long, curved legs. These are new, aren't they? Zane asked. I bought these today. I thought they would look great with a thigh-high slit cocktail dress. It's been so long since you dressed like this for me, Zane said. Why such a special seductive ensemble for a random friend? Zane asked casually. I just wanted to look good, was Bryce's only response, trying to make it sound unusual but not very convincingly. You know, Zane said, your breasts are more than enough to fill a black dress without a bra if you want to look particularly sexy. You'll just have to be careful when you bend over so you don't fall out of the dress. I didn't even think about it, Zane, Bryce replied. I was afraid my bra would be too visible in any of these dresses. I'll do it and be careful like you said. Zane realized that Bryce now felt that he was okay with her plans for the evening. This made her include him even more in preparation for her night out. Apparently, she even thought that Zane might be getting his own pleasure from the prospect of his wife with a stranger. She was very wrong. I was going to wear a diamond necklace with matching earrings. What do you think? I think you should stick with the theme of black to match your dress, Zane said enthusiastically. I offer your black sapphire pendant. It will hang just between your breasts like a hypnotic amulet, and you must wear matching black sapphire earrings. You're right, darling. These would be the perfect accessories to go with the dress. And so tempting, Bryce said as she approved of his choice. All the while, Zane kept a calm and collected expression on his face. Inside, however, his guts were knotted and burning with anger, bordering on rage. By the time Bryce had put on her cocktail dress and smoothed out the pleats around her waist and hips, she walked over to Zane, turned her back to him, and asked him to button her dress, which he did. She stepped forward to show her leg up to the top of her stockings and admired herself. She then took her purse and packed a bag of dancing shoes. She was almost ready to leave, but she paused for a moment and turned to Zane. While I'm putting on my coat, Could you bring me half a glass of your spiced rum? I'm feeling a little restless, and this will help calm me down." This request was unusual in the way events unfolded. It would have been more natural for her to go downstairs and have a farewell drink with her husband. Always intuitive, Zayn sensed that she wanted to leave him in the room for a few minutes. He said, "Of course you are nervous. This will be an eventful evening for you. I hope you take advantage of this night's opportunities." Having said this, Zayn left the bedroom, leaving the door ajar. He stopped before going down the stairs and looked back into the bedroom between the wall and the door hinge. He saw his wife quickly walk over to his side of the bed and take something from the nightstand drawer, placing it in her purse. He didn't see what it was, but he knew what it was. He then went downstairs, walked to the bar, and poured Bryce a glass of rum and a third double glass for himself. When he returned to the bedroom, Bryce was sitting in a chair by her dressing table. "Thank you, darling," she said. "This is exactly what I needed." "I've never seen you so beautiful and sexy," Zayn remarked. "Thank you, darling," Bryce replied. "I'm so glad you understand what this means to me. You're so tolerant of me, and I promise to make it up to you. Maybe I could get dressed again soon, and you could put on your tuxedo, and we could go to dinner in the theater, and then we could come home and you could make passionate love to me." "We'll see how it goes," Zayn replied indifferently. Bryce stood up and announced, "I have to go. I don't want to be late." Zayn walked her down to the front door. "Before you go, darling, I want to take some photos of you." "Oh, I'd love that. After all, I don't dress up that often." Zayn asked Bryce to stand next to the pots by the glass front door, which provided a suitable backdrop for photos. Zayn said, "Turn sideways towards me, and then turn your upper body towards the camera like models do." Bryce complied with his request, and Zayn took some photos of his beautiful wife. "Now," he said, "turn to me, lean forward, being careful not to fall out of the dress and lift the hem so that I can easily see a lot of legs and the top of the stocking." Almost drunk with self-satisfaction, Bryce again complied with his request, and Zayn took half a dozen more photos. Bryce looked at her watch and said, "I really have to go." She added, "I don't know when I'll be back, so please don't wait for me." Zayn answered prophetically, "Don't worry, I won't wait for you." Finally, Bryce said, "Kiss me and wish me a nice evening." Bryce leaned forward and added, "Kiss me on the cheek, so you don't smudge my lipstick." She turned her face slightly to the left and closed her eyes. Zayn hit his wife almost as hard as he could on her right cheek. He knew it hurt because his arm was stinging from the blow. Bryce stumbled back and rested her back against the front door, completely shocked by the attack. Her expression was full of surprise and disbelief. She kept her hand on her painful cheek. The pain was significant. "Zayn, what? I don't understand. Why?" Zayn approached his wife and said, "On what planet did you ever think that I would approve of my wife going on a date with another man dressed like a frivolous woman?" Bryce tried to answer, "But I thought you were okay with it. You didn't seem to mind. You even helped me." Zayn hit her left cheek just as hard as his right. Bryce was now scared. Her facial expression showed it. She didn't know how many more blows she was about to receive. He moved even closer to her face. "In what alternate dimension did you assume that I would tolerate this level of disrespect, arrogance, and contempt from an unfaithful wife? Did you really think that I would allow myself to be cuckolded by a wife who dresses like she's ready to have sex all night with her lover?" Bryce already had tears in her eyes by this time. "But it was only supposed to be dinner," she cried. "This is complete nonsense," Zayn snapped. He grabbed her purse and was about to open it when Bryce screamed, "Don't! Please don't!" Zayn opened his purse and pulled out a string of gold-wrapped Trojan condoms, holding them in front of her face. "You took them from my nightstand when you sent me downstairs for your rum, didn't you?" Bryce tried to justify herself. "They were just in case. I didn't intend to use them." "Whatever," Zayn replied angrily. Bryce began to realize how poorly she had misjudged her husband. She could see that he was holding back the tears that formed in his eyes due to the pain he was experiencing. "Please, Zayn," she begged. "It was a big mistake. I didn't want to hurt you. I really thought... I don't know what I thought. I was so fascinated by this man. He was giving me so much attention. I should never have gotten involved in this. I'll cancel the date. We'll stay home together. We can get cozy in front of the fireplace. Just you and me. Unlikely, Zane said. If you stay here, I'll spank you until I'm tired of raising my hand. Zane took his wife's coat and purse and pushed them into her hands. I want you out of here right now. Don't even think about coming back until tomorrow afternoon because I won't let you in. With that, Zane opened the front door and forced his wife out onto the porch to her car. He opened the car door and pushed her inside. You won't need this, he said as he grabbed her purse and found her keys. He took the house key off the key fob. He also removed the automatic garage door remote control from the sunshade. But where should I go? Bryce cried. I don't care, Zane replied. Stay with Andrea for a few days. It's over a 2-hour drive, Bryce complained. Then find a Hampton Inn or Holiday Express and stay there. I don't care. Just get out of my sight. Bryce saw that her husband was completely serious and at the same time very angry, ready to hurt her even more. She started the car, pulled out into the street, and sped off. Zane watched her drive away until she was out of sight. He returned to the house. When he entered, he saw a bag of dancing shoes on the floor. He thought to himself, she probably won't need them tonight. Zane suddenly felt tired. He walked over to his bar and poured himself another fourth double glass of spiced rum and collapsed into his leather chair. He suddenly felt a great loss and began to cry. He felt other emotions: anger, humiliation, and pain. As the thoughts in his head became more organized, he realized that he had to do something. He needed to find a way to show his extreme displeasure with his wife's actions that was so clear that it couldn't be misunderstood. He needed to do something to show that he was not going to forgive an offense of this magnitude. His first thought was to kick her out of the house. He thought about gathering all her things and putting them in large black trash bags, leaving them outside so she could pick them up when she returned. He went upstairs to look around. His wife had a huge wardrobe in her closet and dozens of pairs of shoes. She also had clothes in almost every closet in the house. She had 12 dresser drawers full of blouses, sweaters, underwear, etc. Zane realized that it would take him a week to remove all her things from the house. He returned to the comfort of his chair and rocked back and forth, trying to think of a way to get rid of all his unhappiness. In the middle of a sip of rum, a solution occurred to him. The solution was so simple. He smiled to himself. Zane remembered that less than 5 hours ago, he bought a fully furnished house. It still had utilities connected: gas, water, and electricity. Wi-Fi was also active. He was ready to move in, and he had the keys in his briefcase. He would need to take with him only a minimal amount of clothing and accessories: several suits and jackets, trousers, shirts for work and leisure. All this would fit into 2 large suitcases. He could pack his laptop, printer, scanner, fax, and other computer equipment in the back seat. By 23, Zane was ready to travel. He left the house open, the house key lying on the kitchen table next to the automatic garage door control. His new home was only 45 minutes from his current home. He drove in silence. Not even the radio was on. He still couldn't believe that his 20-year marriage had been so badly damaged, perhaps irrevocably, and damaged by the man he loved and trusted the most. He sometimes held back tears during his trip. When he arrived at the cul-de-sac where his new home was located, it was very dark. There were no streetlights. He drove slowly to his new place and pulled into the driveway. He parked in the carport, which was located next to the side entrance to the house. The double-detached garage was another 50 feet up the driveway. The porch light was on. He left it on when he finished his last inspection earlier that day. Zane used his keys to enter the house through the side door on the back porch and began to turn on the lights. Although the house was neatly cleaned, it was still in a state of repair. Zane walked from the back porch into the kitchen. The house did not have a formal dining room. Instead, there was a very large kitchen area that served as a dining area, with a 5-foot diameter round wooden table in the center and 6 matching chairs. Zane continued into the family room, the living room, and finally the bedrooms. As he walked through the house, his thoughts determined what needed to be upgraded and changed to make the house sellable. Although he had no plans to resell the house anytime soon, he usually completely rebuilt a house of this condition. Everything was going: cabinets, flooring, appliances, bathrooms, light fixtures, everything. However, since he was going to make this house his home for the near future, he had to do the renovations gradually in order to have a place to live. Zane began unloading his car. Although the house had a moderate amount of storage space, half of it was taken up by the late owner's belongings. The family, acting on behalf of their mother, took only what was valuable to her: clothes, photographs, and family albums, a wedding china set, some works of art, etc. They even left an outdated computer system in one of the bedrooms, which they used as an office and sewing room. Zane moved his computer and peripherals into the same space. Zane was tired. It was late, and his 4 double-spiced rums were making their presence felt. There were sheets and blankets in the linen closet. Once he finished making the bed, Zane stripped down to his shorts and went to bed. The next morning, he woke up early as sunlight flooded the bedroom. He didn't close the curtains before going to bed. He had a slight hangover. He quickly showered, dressed in casual clothes, and then went to the kitchen to make coffee. The elderly couple had an old-fashioned coffee maker, and luckily he found a jar of coffee in the pantry. Zane approved of the gas stove even though it was very old. While he drank his coffee, he looked through all the cabinets and drawers in the kitchen. They were filled with all sorts of pots and pans, kitchen utensils, glassware, dry and canned foods, serving utensils, and cookbooks. Zane noticed that there were 2 full china sets that had not been taken. He later learned that the mother had inherited her mother's china, as well as her mother-in-law's china. Zane made himself a breakfast of oatmeal, washed the dishes, put them in the dishwasher, and headed out to the garage. He had seen it before and knew that it was so packed with boxes and crates that not even one car would fit into a 2-car garage. He opened some of the boxes and found a large amount of equipment used by catering companies to serve customers. Looks like it was the job of both previous owners, and they just packed up their stuff when they retired and forgot about it. They left their only car in the carport. In the backyard, there was a rather nice, partially enclosed patio area that opened directly from the sliding glass doors of both the family room and the master bedroom. Pots with plants hung on the beams above. It needed a bit of sprucing up, but it was perfectly usable the way it was. There was an old rusty barbecue in the corner of the patio that Zane was going to throw out and replace with a small gas barbecue. 3 outdoor lamps, covered in translucent mosaic tiles, hung above the beams. Zane imagined the old couple often used their patio for morning coffee and evening wine. After inspecting the house, garage, and yard, Zane made a plan to renovate the place. First, he organized a sale of everything that could be sold. What didn't sell, he took to a second-hand store. What was not suitable for the second-hand store, he took to the landfill. He then began restoring the house and grounds. Upon inspection of the yard, Zane discovered that it was full of weeds. There was no grass as such. The brick flower beds were cracked and bricks were missing. The asphalt driveway was in need of repair. He noticed that the 3-foot concrete block walls separating his home from its neighbors were damaged. Someone hit them with a car in the past. Zane called his contractor, Cesar Quintero, who was working on Zane's townhouse and detached home with his team of craftsmen. He asked Cesar to come to his new place so they could discuss a plan of action for renovating the house. While Zane waited for Cesar in his front yard, he met the first of his new neighbors, a Vietnamese widow, about 50 years old, who lived in the house on the left as seen from the street, and her aging mother. The widow's name was Lee, which was the English form of her Vietnamese name. Her mother's name was Gina, which was also a form of her Vietnamese name. Lee spoke English with a strong accent. Her mother spoke almost no English. Lee was on her way to work, but said she would be his guide around the area and introduce him to other residents of the cul-de-sac. Zane said he would appreciate the courtesy. Just then, Cesar pulled up in his pickup truck. Zane and Cesar greeted each other like the friends they had become, and then Cesar looked at the front of the house. "Yes," he said, "this is by far the least attractive house on the street. I don't know what else can be done here, but we definitely need to give this place a little curb appeal." Zane and Cesar looked around the house, and Cesar saw the same things that needed to be done that Zane saw. They then walked around the perimeter of the cul-de-sac. Cesar noted that many homes are in need of repairs: corroded walkways, broken flower beds, cracked walls, rickety fences, missing shutters, unkempt lawns full of weeds, and so on. After they decided on renovation priorities, Cesar left and Zane was left alone again. He turned on his cell phone and noticed the calls. All but one were from his wife, starting around 2 p.m., probably around the time she returned home from her night out. He listened to them on voicemail. "Zane," she begged, "I just came home and found that you moved out. Please, please talk to me. I'm so sorry that I disappointed you so much," and so on and so on. The rest of the messages were similar. "Please, Zane," she begged. "Things went so bad for me last night. I just have to explain. Don't leave me like this," and so on and so on. Zane skipped to the last message. It was from his daughter, Andrea. "Dad, what did you do to Mom? She called me this afternoon and cried when she told me that you moved out of the house and she doesn't know where you are. She even said that you hit her. How could you do that?" Zane called his daughter. She immediately responded and started hitting on him. "Dad, I don't know what's going on between you and Mom, but you need to come home and fix it." He answered her. "Did your mother tell you why I left home? Why I left her?" "Whatever it was, Dad, it couldn't be that bad." "Actually, Andrea, it was. In fact, she left me first. Before you call me again, talk to your mom and demand that she tell you the absolute truth about why I left her. Then I'll talk to you again." "Okay, Dad," Andrea agreed. "Mom is coming to stay with us for a few days. She didn't want to stay in your big house alone." Zane didn't hear from Andrea for 3 days. During this time, Cesar began cleaning up Zane's yard. The first thing he did was repair the walls on each side of the house. In addition to the regular concrete blocks, he added red block caps to make them look more decorative and less harsh. Without asking his neighbors, Zane asked Cesar to make similar repairs to all the concrete walls in the area. Word spread quickly, and neighbors came out of their homes to thank the new man on the block for his work. For Zane, it was just a small, added cost to get all the repairs done. He justified this by thinking that by improving all the houses, he was increasing the value of his own property. As it turns out, when Cesar was installing a new asphalt driveway at Zane's detached home, he intentionally ordered more asphalt than was needed to completely replace Zane's driveway. Zane asked Cesar's workers to inspect the driveways of each of the other houses on the cul-de-sac, filling holes and cracks and applying a protective coating to each driveway. The extra expense was not small for Zane, but it was worth it. Meanwhile, Zane organized and announced his sale. All of his neighbors on the cul-de-sac attended the sale, as well as many people from surrounding areas. It was a success, and Zane got rid of most of the stuff that was cluttering his house and garage. He was cleaning up unsold items and putting them in Cesar's pickup truck for transport to the thrift store when he received a call from his daughter. "Dad, we need to meet. I need to show and tell you things you don't know." "I know what I know. I know what I saw," Zane replied. "Did your mother tell you how she treated me? Did she tell you everything?" "Mom told me everything. Absolutely everything," Andrea replied, "and a lot of things you don't know." Zane replied, "If this is your mom trying to talk to me or get back together, forget it. She's already shown me how little respect she has for me." Andrea responded sharply, "Dad, Mom knows I'm going to talk to you, but she won't be with me. By the way, when she told me what happened, I scolded her. I can't believe she treated my dad like that. I don't blame you for anything you did. Mom needed exactly that lesson. I can come to you wherever you are and talk to you about everything that happened, Ed. It's more than you know." Zane felt his daughter crying. "I really don't want anyone to know where I live at the moment. I'll meet you at the TGI Fridays near your house tomorrow at 11 a.m. and we'll talk." "Okay, Dad," Andrea said. "See you then. I love you, Dad." "I love you too, daughter," he said before hanging up. The renovation of the house continued. Zane ordered new windows. Many of the windows in the house were painted over and could not be opened. Zane also ordered French doors with additional screen doors for the family room and master bedroom. Zane walked into TGI Fridays at exactly 11 a.m. His daughter was already waiting for him in the restaurant lobby. They hugged and asked for a table in the corner. Both ordered coffee. There weren't many people in the restaurant at this time of day. Zane got straight to the point. "What do you want to discuss, Andrea? If this is what I did after your mom got dressed for her hot date, I don't regret anything. I don't have to put up with such disdainful treatment, especially from my wife." "Dad," Andrea began, "this is more serious than you can imagine, and you won't like what I'm about to say, not even a little bit. But first you have to know that Mom is horrified. She's so sorry for her actions that she can't stop crying. She's very sorry for how much she hurt you. She couldn't stay with us longer than the weekend because she needed to be at home where she was closer to work. I visited her twice. All she does is go to work, force herself to make it to the end of the day, and then returns home to an empty house. After what she tried to do to me, I don't have any feelings for her," Zane countered. Andrea pulled out 2 items from her large bag, a large brown envelope and a regular letter-sized envelope. "Dad," Andrea began, picking up the smaller envelope, "this is Mom's apology letter for you. She knows you don't want to talk to her, and even if you did, she's not sure she wants you to look at her. She is so ashamed. I can't force you to read the letter. You can just throw it away if you want, but anyway, here it is. Maybe you can read it later." "What's in the big envelope?" Zane asked. "Dad, this is a complete description of Mom's relationship with the salesman she was on a date with. This is written with surgical precision at my urgent request." "Why should I read this?" Zane asked. "I really don't care. This wasn't written for you, Dad. It was written for the HR department at Mom's work. And why should they care what Bryce did on her own time and with a non-company employee?" "Dad," Andrea said, taking Zane's hands and with a sad expression on her face, "I need to tell you what happened after you kicked Mom out of the house. It will be painful, but it's better to hear it from me than from anyone else. I told her to stay with you tonight. I didn't want her around. I wasn't sure I didn't want to spank her again." "I know that, Dad," Andrea said. "When she complained that the drive was long, you advised her to find a motel or hotel to stay at." "Fine," Zane asked. "Mom was in pain, not just because of the slaps, but she already realized how badly she had screwed up. No matter how angry you seemed, she knew that you were truly hurt by her behavior. She was confused too. One minute you're helping her get ready for a date, which is clearly against your true nature, and the next you're slapping her and yelling at her." "I never yelled at her," Zane retorted. "I told her very sternly that I thought she was planning to cuckold me by having sex with another man. She claims she never intended to have sex with him." Zane replied, "She took the protective equipment from my nightstand." "I know, Dad," Andrea replied. "You couldn't come to a different conclusion." "Dad, when Mom left the house, she hurt inside. She was confused and repentant. In her extremely emotional state, she somehow came to the conclusion that she should meet the seller as she had planned, tell him that everything between them was over, and never contact her again. At that time, she still thought he was a good guy, a friend. Then she was going to come to my house and spend the night. When she arrived at the hotel, she immediately went to the women's room. Her makeup was a mess, and her cheeks were still red and slightly puffy. When she was ready, she entered the restaurant and found her date, Harvey, who already had a table for them. Mom didn't greet him with a peck on the cheek or a hug. He immediately realized that something was wrong. Mom got straight to the point, but before she could say it all, she started crying. Her partner did everything he could to comfort her. He hugged her and told her everything would be okay. He ordered a glass of wine to help her calm down. When the wine arrived, she drank the entire glass in one go, on an empty stomach. Harvey told her not to worry about their relationship and that he understood that. However, he suggested that perhaps you were too bossy. After all, they were just about to have dinner. and then he ordered a bottle of wine for the table. He continued to scold you, Dad, saying that your reaction was too over the top. No real man would ever hit a woman. The wine began to soften my mother, and she began to relax a little, and she continued to drink the wine that Harvey gave her. Soon my mother felt the full effect of alcohol. She told Harvey that she had to leave and make the 2-hour drive to my house. He told her he didn't think she was fit to drive, and she probably wasn't. Mom told Harvey that if she couldn't drive, she would get a hotel room and spend the night and then drive to my house the next morning. Harvey said he would check availability at the front desk. When he returned, he told her that the hotel was booked because of a convention in town. In addition, he invited her to rest for a few hours in his room. It was still early evening, and she could sleep for a few hours before she left. Apparently, Mom was very busy and needed help just getting to the elevator. Once in Harvey's room, he went from helping her to kissing her neck. His mother pushed him away and angrily told him that their relationship was over. All she wanted to do was lie down for a few hours. She said she felt dizzy and practically collapsed on the bed. Her partner was kind enough to lift her feet onto the bed and take off her shoes. She seems to remember Harvey massaging her legs, but she soon fell asleep. Zane sat in silence, fascinated by the story unfolding before him. Andrea continued. The next thing Mom remembers is sex. It was over in just a few seconds. Mom told me she thought it was you. She didn't realize at that moment that she wasn't at home in your bed. Zane slammed his hand on the table. So she slept with him anyway, he exclaimed. Dad, Andrea stopped him. Mom didn't consent to sex with this guy. Zane remembered that evening for Andrea. Let's see. She dresses provocatively for a hot date, meets him at his hotel restaurant. They have a drink together. She goes up to his room of her own accord and now claims no consent. Is this true? Yes, Dad, Andrea said, but that's not all. Early in the morning, when it was just beginning to get light outside, my mother woke up and realized that she was hugged by a naked man lying in bed with her. He kept one hand on her chest and tried to have sex with her again. She pushed the man away and jumped out of bed. Now sober, with only a headache, Mom realized what had happened. Harvey got her drunk and then took advantage of her while she slept and tried to do it again. She screamed at him and screamed that she never wanted him to have sex with her. Harvey laughed and told her that he didn't feel that way last night. Mom knew what had happened, and she immediately felt ashamed of herself for letting this man lead her down the garden path for months, and all he ever wanted to do was get into her pants. Mom went to the bathroom, took a shower, cleaned herself up and left the hotel. She returned home, hoping to find you there, tell you what happened to her, and ask for your forgiveness. Arriving at the house, she quickly noted that you had moved out. Mom was beside herself with guilt and shame. Then she called me and told me that she had a fight with you. You hit her twice and kicked her out of the house. I told her to come to my house and we will decide what to do after that. That's when I called you for the first time. When my mother came to my house, she was still confused. I asked her what happened. She avoided giving direct answers at the time because I think she was very ashamed of how she treated you so badly and what happened to her. She only told me that you two had a fight and that you slapped her twice and then kicked her out of the house. She said nothing more before she retreated to the guest room and refused to tell me any more. Only the next day I was able to find out the whole story from my mother. Judging by her behavior and tears, I believe that she told me everything exactly as it happened. I listened to all this and was not convinced. My wife got dressed for a hot date that involved more than dinner and dancing. What about the protective equipment she hid in her purse? I asked. You can tell me they weren't meant to be used later that night. You're going to have some faith, Dad. Mom said that if she didn't accept them, then she wouldn't have the slightest chance of having sex with him. But if she had them, then the only thing standing between her and the hotel room bed was her willpower. She wouldn't entertain this man simply because she chose not to. She thought she needed to feel wanted. This sounded like nonsense to Zane, and he said so. She'll have a hard time convincing me of that. Andrea changed the subject. Dad, Mom found a counselor who will help her understand what she did and why. The advisor also wanted to meet with you, but you couldn't be found, and we decided you probably wouldn't participate anyway. Sometimes I come in instead of you, just to listen to what Mom says and understand what situation led to her stupidity. Zane confirmed Andrea's conclusion that he would not have participated in counseling because he felt the problem was entirely of Bryce's making. Let her understand her actions. Andrea changed the subject again. Mom's HR department read Mom's statement about the incident, consulted with the firm's lawyer, and decided that any rape allegations against Harvey would not prevail. It was a classic case of he said, she said. However, they passed on Mom's description of events to Harvey's HR department. Harvey readily admitted to having sex with his mom, but said it was consensual. The two HR departments agreed that it was a he said, she said scenario, and it would be futile to try to hold Harvey accountable. However, Harvey's company noted that it was inappropriate for one of their salespeople to have sex with a married woman, or anyone else, in the company of a customer. Harvey was fired from his job. Zane and Andrea sat in silence for a long time. This was a lot of information for Zane to absorb. He initially vaguely thought that he would stay away from Bryce for a while before giving her the opportunity to apologize to him for her actions. He knew it would be difficult to move forward, especially at first, but he thought that with time their lives would return to normal. But now everything was different. She actually had sex with her so-called friend. And regardless of Andrea's description of events, Zane wasn't sure it wasn't on purpose. He realized that there was a conflict within him that he could not resolve. His immediate solution to this was to do nothing at the moment. He was going to continue his alternative life and stay away from Bryce. He talked to Andrea from time to time, and she urged him to talk to his wife and sort things out. It was actually an open wound. It never occurred to Zane to divorce Bryce. He could achieve almost the same thing by simply separating himself from his old life with her. Over the next few days and then weeks, Zane continued to renovate his new home and also help his neighbors improve the appearance of their homes. He also resumed his career, finding, buying, renovating, and selling distressed properties. Among other things, he renovated and landscaped a small island in the middle of a cul-de-sac. It became a quiet place to relax in the middle of the day or evening, a meeting place for neighbors when they had a party, or an ideal place to celebrate a birthday. The local ladies found out that Zane was a bad cook. Moreover, they learned that he usually ate a frozen sandwich for breakfast in the morning and a frozen dinner in the evening. To show their gratitude, the neighborhood wives organized the preparation of casseroles, meatloaves, soups, salads, desserts, and a variety of other dishes so that their generous new resident would be well provided with good food. Late in the afternoon, as Zane was reviewing the cost spreadsheet for purchasing and renovating a new property, there was a knock on the door. Without thinking about it, he saved his work on the computer and opened the door. It was not one of his neighbors, as he thought. It was Bryce. "Bryce," Zane said, "I didn't expect to see you here. How did you find me?" Bryce didn't answer his question. Instead, she said, "Can I come in?" Much of the anger inside Zane that he had felt the last time he saw his wife had diminished. Zane suddenly felt like he should be polite. "Please come in," was all he said, still stunned by his wife's sudden appearance. Bryce clearly dressed for the occasion. She wore a simple white sundress and matching flats. Her hair was down, and she looked washed and clean. Bryce entered the house with several bags of groceries. "Where's the kitchen?" she asked. "I need to put this down." Zane pointed to the swinging kitchen door adjacent to the dining room, and Bryce immediately walked through the door and placed the bags on the countertop. She returned and looked around. "It's a little sparse, but it's nice. I think you fixed it, whatever it was." Zane replied, "I haven't completely finished the renovation yet, but it's livable." "Can I get a tour?" asked Bryce. "Of course," Zane replied and led her through the living room, down the hallway, through each of the bedrooms, and finally into the master bedroom. At each stop, Zane pointed out what he had already done and what he still needed to do. Bryce noted that compared to their real home, there wasn't much closet space. Zane replied that he had more than enough and that his clothes only took up half of what he had. Bryce also commented on the double bed. "It's more than big enough for me," Zane said. "And besides, a double bed would fill up the room too much." Bryce didn't hesitate to make a couple of suggestions on things like curtains and carpeting. In the past, Zane has often used her ideas in homes he has renovated. He then led her through the new French doors into the living room and onto the screened patio. Bryce loved the cozy atmosphere of the small patio and commented, "It would be great to relax here in the evening after dinner. I often relax here in the evening after dinner with a glass of my favorite strong red wine. It puts me in the mood for sleep." Back in the living room, Zane had finally come to his senses after his wife's unexpected appearance. "How did you find me?" Zane asked. "It wasn't easy," Bryce believed. "I was able to get some help and some insight into where you might be from your colleagues in your real estate office. I drove by a few days ago and saw your car in the carport. I thought long and hard about ending your new life. But I needed to see you at least for a little while, so I decided to come over and cook dinner for you. I know you're a terrible cook, so I brought everything I needed for a meatloaf dinner. I hoped you would tolerate me long enough to let me cook you dinner, and then leave you alone again." She added, "You can help me in the kitchen or whatever you're doing, and I'll call you when dinner is ready. I have a spreadsheet program that I need to finish, and then I'll do what I can to help with dinner." When Zane came into the kitchen 20 minutes later and offered to help, Bryce turned to him, a little teary-eyed, and said, "You don't really need my help, do you? Your refrigerator and freezer are full of food. I didn't find a single frozen dinner in the entire kitchen. The neighbors' wives take very good care of me in terms of food," Zane said. "I have helped several of my neighbors with small projects to improve the appearance of their homes, and they pay me with a casserole or brisket from time to time. However, I would absolutely love one of your meatloaf dinners, and I more than appreciate the fact that you came here to make this for me." "That's a weak excuse to see you again," Bryce replied. "I missed you so much. If you have read my letter to you, you know how sorry I am for treating you so badly. However, I wanted to tell you personally that I am so remorseful for my actions. A stupid middle-aged lady who thought she needed a little fun in her daily life after a young, handsome Lothario showed me some attention. I was such a fool." "Please, Bryce," Zane said. "I know you're sorry. And Andrea told me what happened to you that night. At first I thought you followed through, but Andrea was convinced you were being used and manipulated. I don't think she would mislead me just to make you seem less guilty." "We don't need to talk about this anymore tonight," Zane said, and the topic was closed. "Our dinner is ready," Bryce said to change the subject. "This meatloaf will last you for days. I hope you like it." With that, Bryce picked up her purse and headed for the door. "Wait," Zane exclaimed. "Won't you stay for dinner?" "I set up seating for 2 people at the table." "No, love," Bryce replied. "I desperately wanted to see you again, but I don't want to interfere with your new life. If you don't mind, I'd like to come back next Friday and cook dinner for you again." "That would be great," Zane replied. "But next time, I'd like you to stay so we can have dinner together and enjoy a glass of wine on the patio." "I'd like that, Zane, but I'll have to see how guilty I still feel." With that, Bryce walked out the door and soon drove away from Zane's house. While Zane has adjusted to living alone, he has also adjusted to not feeling lonely. Now, after the sudden departure of his wife, he felt lonely. Zane's feelings for his wife were mixed. He was still hurt and a little angry that Bryce would even think about going on a date with someone other than himself. On the other hand, he missed being with his old wife. He felt like Bryce was trying to be that old wife again. The following Friday evening, Bryce showed up at the door again. This time, she had steaks that she wanted him to grill while she prepared the salad, potatoes, and vegetables. This time, Zane was ready for her with a bottle of wine, which they both started drinking while they prepared dinner. They ate on the covered trellis terrace at an outdoor table large enough for 2 people. The conversation was mostly light. Bryce asked Zane about his job and the condition of the houses he worked on, and Zane asked about Bryce's daily activities. Bryce admitted that she had a lot of time to herself these days after she got home from work, started reading a lot, and even joined a book club. Zane asked about the job and immediately regretted doing it. Bryce admitted that she still feels awkward being seen in the office. No one had ever told her anything about the incident with the sales representative, but everyone knew the story. After a pleasant evening, Bryce again brushed it off, saying she still didn't want to interfere with Zane's new lifestyle. She added that she was looking forward to seeing him once a week and cooking dinner for him. Zane agreed that this was a new routine that he would like to continue as well. One Thursday in the 4th week since Bryce started coming over to his house, Zane emailed her to let her know that the people in his cul-de-sac were having a party on Saturday and that she didn't have to cook dinner on Friday or take anything with her. Do not bring. She replied that she would at least bring a bowl of potato salad to the party. When Zane opened the door, he was pleasantly surprised at how good Bryce looked. She was wearing a beautiful summer dress with a moderate neckline. They relaxed until it was time to go to the party, which started around 3 p.m. Bryce explained that she wanted to look good for the neighbors, but it was obvious to Zane that she wanted to look good for him. Party organizers were busy arranging tables, and neighbors were bringing out lounge chairs to sit on. One of the neighbors was an avid barbecue enthusiast and would fire up the gas on his barbecue while cooking several $100s worth of steak, chicken, and sausage. Almost all the neighbors brought beer, wine, soft drinks, and hard drinks to the party. Zane brought several bottles of his favorite dark red wine. When neighbors came over, Zane introduced them to Bryce. They were all surprised by her gifts and accidentally told her that they didn't know if Zane was actually married. Then, of course, they had to wonder why Zane and Bryce weren't living in the same house together. Throughout the day and evening, Zane received compliments on how beautiful and charming his wife was. At the same time, Bryce was told numerous stories about how much Zane had done for the area. Several neighbors showed Bryce the improvements Zane had made to their homes. Although all the neighbors were working men and women, the Bryce said they had all taken a lot more pride in the appearance of their homes since Zane moved in. Gradually, when everyone got used to eating and drinking, the men seemed drawn to each other and talked about sports. All the women seemed to want to know more about Bryce and gathered around her. They all really wanted to know more about the relationship between Zane and Bryce. Meanwhile, the children played together in the street and drew with chalk on the asphalt. It was already late evening when the party began to break up. Parents needed to put their children to bed. Most people helped wrap up the leftovers. As Zane carried the beach chairs back to his house, he realized he had drunk a lot of wine. It was also obvious that Bryce was feeling a little tipsy as well. Once home, Bryce began packing her things in preparation for the trip home. "I don't think you should go home tonight," Zane said. "You're too drunk." "What should I do?" Bryce replied, feeling like she shouldn't stay because she didn't want to push Zane into an emotional corner. "You can stay in the extra bedroom," he said. "I have a t-shirt you can sleep in." "Thanks, Zane," Bryce said, "but I don't want to cause you any trouble." Zane disappeared into his bedroom and returned with a white t-shirt. Bryce took it, went into the bedroom, and closed the door. Zane was turning off the lights and lowering the temperature when he heard Bryce calling his name. Turning, he saw his wife standing at the entrance to the corridor. She took off her dress and put on a t-shirt. Zane has always favored tight t-shirts, and Bryce's t-shirts hugged her curves very nicely. Her breasts were clearly defined, as was her narrow waist, which had a towel around it. "Zane, please, could you give me a good-night hug before I go to bed?" Zane was mesmerized by the sexy figure in front of him. For a minute, Zane forgot why he was angry with her and stepped forward to put his arm around her waist. Bryce, in turn, wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder. They held each other close for only a few seconds before Bryce broke the hug and, without saying anything, hurried back to the bedroom and closed the door. Zane was almost glad the hug was so short. He felt Bryce's body react. If the hug had lasted just a few seconds longer, she would have felt how much he wanted her. When Zane woke up on Sunday morning, he had a slight headache, a hangover from the night before. He trudged into the bathroom to take a shower. Before doing this, he took 2 Excedrin tablets. He could tell by the sound of the shower in the family bathroom that Bryce had woken up before him. After getting dressed, Zane wandered into the kitchen, where he found Bryce in a sundress, preparing a standard breakfast of bacon, eggs, toast, juice, and coffee. Bryce cheerfully told him, "Your neighbors may bring you food for dinner, but I don't think you usually have a good breakfast. All I found in the freezer were frozen breakfast sandwiches." "You're right," Zane replied. "I usually eat either a breakfast sandwich or a protein drink before I head out the door." Looking outside, Zane noted that it was a nice sunny morning. "Why don't we have lunch on the patio?" he suggested. "I'll set the table." After Bryce brought the food to the table, Zane held her chair until she sat down. "It's a beautiful morning, Zane. Thank you for last night and thank you for this morning. This is the greatest happiness I have felt in a long time." "I feel the same way," Zane replied. Bryce took the opportunity to get a feel for how Zane felt about their relationship, but she didn't want to push things too hard or too fast. "Do you have any ideas about when you might want to come home?" she asked, trying to make it a normal question. After thinking about it for a few minutes, Zane replied, "I don't know if I want to go home again." Bryce took this to mean he didn't want to date her again, and she was sad, but tried not to show it. "Well, if so, then I'll wait. Until you do, I'd like to continue coming here on Fridays and cooking you dinner. You do not mind?" "Yes, I would like that. I always thought you were the best chef in the world." Bryce was hurt that Zane only wanted her for the cooking, but she had a feeling he wanted something more from her, but she wasn't about to rush him. Bryce returned the following Friday afternoon. She looked good. She was wearing a pink pleated skirt and a cashmere sweater. The skirt was short enough to show off her shapely legs, and the sweater was tight enough to show off her proud C-plus breasts. "What are you going to cook this time?" Zane asked. "I brought 2 marbled ribeye steaks with me that are looking forward to being grilled. If you cook, I'll make a salad with lettuce, tomato, avocado, and bacon." She then added, "I also brought 2 bottles of strong red wine. I was hoping to get so drunk tonight that you asked me to stay again." Zane was oblivious to how his relationship with Bryce was developing. He saw that they were renewing their marriage, but he also knew that he still had anger issues. Perhaps this night would be a good time to take them outside, but he didn't know how to start the conversation, and he didn't want a harsh discussion of the past. "We'll see how the evening goes," Zane replied, without making any commitments. Turning on the gas barbecue and closing the lid to let it heat up, Zane walked into the kitchen where Bryce was busy preparing a salad. He opened one of the bottles of wine and poured 2 glasses. He left one with Bryce and took the other out to the patio along with the bottle, which he placed on a small table. After a while, Bryce brought the salad. Zane took this as his cue to start cooking the steaks and threw them on the hot grill. "It will take about 10 minutes, he said. Bryce handed Zane her glass of wine and raised it as if about to make a toast. "What are we going to fry?" Zane asked, but immediately regretted what he said. "I don't know what you want to drink, but my toast is to my fervent hope that you will eventually let me into your life." This toast made Zane a little embarrassed. "We'll talk later," he said, returning to tend to the sizzling steaks. Several awkward minutes passed until Zane announced that the steaks were ready and placed each one on a plate, which he placed on the table. Both Zane and Bryce ate a large portion of salad. Zane was about to start eating when he stopped and looked at Bryce. "I'm sorry things turned out this way," that's all he said. Zane's statement was so harsh that it caught Bryce off guard. For a moment, it looked like she was about to cry. She reached across the table and took Zane's hand. "Thank you," she said. "I was so afraid that you thought I willingly slept with someone and that you would never forgive me." Zane continued, "Sometimes I thought if I hadn't kicked you out of the house, this would never have happened." Still clutching Zane's hand, Bryce said, "None of this was your fault. It was all me. I was a stupid old woman who allowed herself to be charmed by a smooth-talking salesman. I will never forgive myself for hurting you the way I did, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it, if you let me." "Well, lettuce goes a long way in that regard," Zane said to lighten the mood. After dinner, when the dishes were washed and put away, Zane asked Bryce if she wanted to watch a movie. When she said yes, he asked her if she had any chick flick she would like to see. Bryce told him she wanted him to put on a movie that he wanted to see. You know, I like action movies that are rated R for violence, nudity, sex, and language. It's normal, she replied. I want to see everything you want to see. I'll watch chick flicks with my daughters and girlfriends. Zane looked at a few options on Netflix and chose something that he thought he would like, and that met his criteria. The film is starting, he announced. Bryce came out of the bathroom where she had freshened up. She was wearing his favorite rose-scented perfume. Without asking, she pressed herself so close to him that he had to put his hand on her shoulder. When he did, Bryce laid her head on his chest, and they continued watching the movie. It didn't escape Zane's notice that Bryce's skirt was hiked up above mid-thigh, and the top buttons of her sweater were undone, revealing a fair amount of cleavage. Zane always thought Bryce was hot. However, it was the events that unfolded around her date that completely turned him away from her, no matter how physically beautiful and sexy she was. The movie was less than halfway through before Zane realized that Bryce was asleep and breathing easily. He continued to let her sleep until the movie ended, and then gently woke her up. "You're going to let me stay the night, aren't you?" she asked, standing up. "Because," she continued, "I don't think I should be driving home this late. Besides," she added, "I brought my pajamas with me." "Yeah, you can stay," Zane agreed, as Bryce disappeared into the guest bedroom. Zane was turning off the TV and lights when Bryce reappeared, wearing the sexiest black baby doll negligee Zane had ever seen. This stunned him for a moment. "How do you like my new pajamas?" Bryce asked, posing for Zane and speaking in a seductive voice. "I like her," Zane said, looking intently at his wife. "I forgot how sexy you can be when you want to impress me." Bryce, encouraged, walked up to Zane and wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her body against his. "I don't want either of us to sleep alone tonight," she whispered in his ear. Bryce could feel her husband reacting to her almost naked body. "I know you haven't fully forgiven me for what I did, but please don't let that stop you from enjoying this evening to the fullest. You can do whatever you want to me. Anything." Any resistance Zane had to Bryce's charms melted away in an instant. Her lips were waiting for him as he kissed her passionately. As they shared a long, heated kiss, Zane pushed Bryce's hair back, causing her head to fall back as well. Zane kissed his wife's throat and then her neck. Bryce moaned hoarsely and said quietly, "Yes, yes, yes." Zane picked his wife up, carried her into his bedroom, and threw her roughly onto the bed. Bryce held out her arms to Zane as he rolled onto the bed. "How could I have thought that having fun with that slick jerk of a merchant could be better than this?" Bryce thought, as she arched her back and pressed her chest to Zane's face. Zane didn't disappoint her. Over the past few months, he has accumulated a lot of sexual energy, and Bryce looked much more attractive than she had at any time in years. Zane thought to himself, maybe a break from everyday life is the key to random great sex. That night, Zane and Bryce went a few rounds before falling asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, over breakfast on the patio, Bryce asked in a pleading voice, "Zane, I think you know how bad I feel about the way I treated you. You should also know that I will never do anything like that again. I know what will happen to me if I do this, but we have been separated for almost 6 months. Don't you think it's time to return home and resume our life together as it was?" Zane stopped eating and wiped his mouth with a napkin, thinking about his answer. "Bryce, I thought about it, but I changed my mind. First of all, this house is too big for me right now. When we had 3 growing children, it was perfect, but now it's just not possible. Besides, I never really fit in with our neighbors. They are all college graduates and professional people, while I barely have a high school diploma. I never had much in common with them. But you make at least as much money as they do on the houses you renovate. And our house has been renovated much better than most in the area, thanks to your contractor and landscaper friends. What I'm trying to say, Bryce, is that this is my home now. This is where I want to live. These are the kind of neighbors I want to have. When completely renovated, this home will be the perfect size and function for my needs. No, Bryce, I'm not going back to my old house. However, it is paid for, and I consider it a great investment. You are completely free to live there as long as you want. Bryce's face suddenly became sad. Oh, Zane, this is not what I wanted. Bryce quickly stood up from the table. I have to go, she announced, putting on a brave face. In just a few minutes, Bryce gathered all her things and walked out the door. Zane felt bad. He didn't mean to hurt her like that. However, he was sure that he wanted to live in his new house and make it his new home. He didn't hear anything from Bryce for 2 weeks. Then, late Friday afternoon, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, Bryce was standing there with 3 suitcases. I have 2 more in the car, she said. What's happening? Zane asked as he stepped aside, letting Bryce pass and taking her 3rd suitcase. Bryce set down her 2 suitcases, turned around, wrapped her arms around Zane's neck, and kissed him passionately. If you want to live in this house, then this is my house too. I don't think you'll like this house, Bryce. It barely has the space you need for all your stuff, especially clothes. In another house, you have clothes in every bedroom closet. Even in the guest room, there is only half a closet where guests can hang their clothes. I gave away almost all my clothes. Most of what I have left is in these suitcases and the trunk of the car. Still, she said boldly, you'll have to come up with a little more wardrobe. Space than what you have. Zane already knew that the master bedroom had very little closet space, and he had tentative plans to open up a wall to the adjacent bedroom, which he used as an office. What about work? Zane asked. This place is a 45-minute drive from your office, and morning and afternoon traffic jams are even longer. I don't have a job anymore, Bryce said. I submitted my resignation. It wasn't much fun to work all day and then come home to an empty house. I was still the talk of the office, and there were even some salespeople who indirectly attacked me based on the rumors that were going around. Besides, you always told me that you make enough money that I don't need to work, so now I'm not going to. Bryce, Zane said critically, I know you don't want to sit in a small house all day. There will be no one to talk to, not even the neighbors. In most of these families, both husband and wife work, with the exception of wives who care for babies and small children. I thought I could do some charity work. Even though my bachelor's degree was outdated, I earned a bachelor's degree in accounting and a minor in psychology. Additionally, I studied Spanish in both high school and college. I thought I could help in the area of broken families and battered women. And the first broken family I want to restore is mine. With that, Bryce hugged and kissed her husband again. Zane already knew he was going to win her back. He just didn't know how to do it. Bryce took the lead. I hope you didn't give away all your sexy cocktail dresses and dancing shoes, Zane whispered in her ear. I have a couple left. Why do you ask? I just thought it would be nice if we went on a fancy date once a month, if not more, Zane replied. I wouldn't mind sometimes dressing up in a dark suit and going out dancing with a beautiful woman who looks absolutely alluring in a sexy cocktail dress. I might even want to splurge on a night in a fancy hotel room rather than drive home. Bryce was beaming with joy. I'd like to do that too, she said, and once again passionately kissed her husband with her whole body. Welcome home, Bryce, Zane said as he picked up his wife and carried her into the bedroom. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.